The slave market on planet Kalen 5 was always loud, dirty, and cruel. Merchants shouted prices. Buyers argued and slaves cried silently from their cages, but in the far corner of the auction floor, one cage stayed quiet, cold, and untouched. Inside it sat a girl. No, a giant. She was taller than any human. Her shoulders wide, her arms heavy with muscle, her skin a pale bluish silver. Glowing faintly in the light, chains wrapped around her wrists, ankles, even her neck. She didn't speak, she didn't beg, she only stared at the floor like nothing mattered anymore. Don't waste your money on that one. A seller laughed as a group of buyers walked past. She's a failed hybrid, made too big, too strong, too broken to breed. One man glanced at her and shook his head. She'd kill you before she cooked for you. She's not even a woman, another said, just a machine in flesh. They all laughed and walked away. The girl heard every word. But she didn't flinch, didn't blink. She was used to it. Her name was Valari, or at least, that's what she remembered from the lab where she was made. She had been built by scientists on a dead moon, mixed with human and alien DNA. Meant to serve in war or labor, but when her body grew beyond their control, when she became too large, too powerful, too ugly by their standards, they threw her into the slave market like trash. That's what she believed. She was trash. Day after day, no one came close to her cage. No one asked her name. No one wanted her until one day a human man stopped in front of her. He was tall by human standards, but next to Valari, he looked small. His hair was dark, his eyes calm, his jacket old but clean. He didn't smell like a soldier or a slaver. He didn't look cruel, but that didn't mean anything. Valar had seen kind faces lie before. The auctioneer walked over and grinned. You don't want that one. Trust me, she's broken goods. Too big, too quiet. Might snap your spine in your sleep. The man didn't answer. He knelt down in front of Valari's cage and looked her in the eyes. You have a name? He asked softly. Valari didn't answer. She didn't want to hope, didn't want to believe anyone could care. But something in his voice wasn't mocking. It wasn't cruel. I'm Dr. Elias Rowan, the man said. I'm not here to hurt. You still, Valari said nothing. She waited for the punchline, the laughter, the threat. But instead, Elias stood and said one word to the auctioneer. I'll take her. The entire floor went quiet. Even the guards stared, confused. You? Serious? The auctioneer laughed. You want that thing? She's not a thing, Elias replied. She's a person. Coins were exchanged, papers signed, and just like that, Valari was sold. When the guards came to unlock her cage, she didn't move. They pointed weapons at her, but she didn't resist. Chains clanked to the floor, heavy like her thoughts. She stepped out, towering above everyone, and followed Elias silently. People whispered as she passed. Some laughed, some looked scared, others disgusted. But Elias didn't look back. Didn't slow down. He walked as if she wasn't a monster behind him, but a companion beside him. They reached his ship, not a warship, not a freighter, just a quiet old science vessel. He led her inside, offered her water, clean clothes, a room to rest. Valari stood still in the hallway, eyes narrowed. What is this? She finally asked, her voice rough from silence. Elias turned and said, It's freedom. She laughed bitterly. There's no such thing for someone like me. Then let's find it together, he said calmly. Valari stared at him, searching his face for the lie, the trick, the threat. But it wasn't there, just kindness real. Or maybe the best illusion she'd ever seen. She stepped into the room, the first real room she'd seen in years. No chains, no cage, no cameras watching, just soft light, clean sheets, and silence. She sat on the bed, touched the pillow, and whispered to herself, Why did he choose me? The question echoed in her heart like thunder, and outside, the ship engines roared to life, taking her far away from the world that called her worthless. She didn't trust him yet. She didn't believe in kindness yet. But something had changed. She was no longer the girl in chains. She was the girl a human had chosen, and that was how her new story began. The ship hummed softly as it floated through space. Valari sat on the edge of her new bed, her massive hands resting on her knees. She hadn't slept. She hadn't eaten. She just stared at the door, waiting for it to open with pain, with orders, with chains again, because that's how it always started. Fake kindness. Soft smiles, and then the screaming. She didn't believe in kindness. Kindness was a trick. And humans were masters at tricks. So when Elias entered the room, carrying a small tray of food, as narrowed bread, fruit, water, all fresh, all real. He set the tray on the table beside her, keeping his movements slow. No sudden gestures, no threats. You haven't eaten since the auction, he said gently. You must be starving. Valari didn't speak. She didn't reach for the food instead. She looked at him like a soldier waiting for a command. Or a prisoner waiting for punishment. You can eat whenever you're ready, he added, and turned to leave. That was the first surprise. He didn't force her. He didn't watch her. Eat like a zoo animal. He simply left her alone. Valari's stomach growled. She eyed the food suspiciously. Poison? Tranquilizer? No, not yet, she thought. They always wait until you trust them. Still, her hunger won. She picked up the bread and sniffed it, then took a bite, warm, soft, and real. Her chest tightened. How long had it been since she tasted real food? She hated that it made her feel human again that night. She didn't sleep. She sat in the corner of the room, knees pulled to her chest, eyes on the door. Any moment now, he'd return with chains, or a collar, or a command to kneel. But morning came, and Elias returned with nothing but a datapad. He placed it on the table, nodded to her, and said, I'll be in the lab if you want to talk. Talk. What kind of master asked a slave to talk? Was this another test? Another game? Valari stood, her massive form almost touching the ceiling. She followed the quiet hum down the corridor, her bare feet making heavy steps on the metal floor. She found Elias working at a small console, scanning old star charts and genetic files. He looked up and smiled, not forced, not fake, just tired but warm. You're curious, he said, not as a question. But a fact you should be, he added. No one's ever treated you like a person before, have they, Valaris? Jaw clenched. No, she answered softly. Good, he said. Then we start from zero. Zero. She repeated, you, me, this ship, everything starts new. She stared at him, confused. He wasn't treating her like a weapon, not like a pet, not even like an alien. He was treating her like a guest. It made no sense. Why did you? By me? She finally asked. Elias paused, leaned back, and looked at her seriously. You don't know what you are, do you? She shook her head slowly. You were made for war, he continued. But someone made a mistake. You weren't born a killer. You were born with a soul. Valari didn't understand that word, soul. She had heard it before in stories, in broken prayers whispered by slaves, but she never thought she had one. Elias stood and walked over, holding something in his hands, a small mirror. He offered it to her. Valari hesitated, then took it. She stared into it and saw her reflection clearly for the first time in years. Silver skin marked with faint scars, golden eyes glowing like twin suns, jaw strong, lips full, hair braided back in thick ropes. She looked like a beast, but she didn't look evil. She looked tired, broken, afraid. I'm not human, she said quietly. No, Elias said. But you don't have to be human to deserve peace. The silence stretched long, and then, for the first time in forever, Valari whispered, What do you want from me? Elias smiled gently. Nothing, he said. I just want you to live, to rest, to laugh, to find out who you are. Valari blinked, her eyes wet and stinging. She looked away quickly, ashamed of her tears. But Elias didn't laugh, didn't mock her. He just walked back to his console and let her cry in peace. That night, Valari didn't sit in the corner. She lay down on the bed, still tense, still alert. But this time, the door stayed open. And no chains came, only silence. And in that silence, something new began to grow, a seed of trust, small, fragile, but real. Valari stood in front of the mirror again, the same one Elias had given her days ago. But this time she didn't look away. She stared, hard, unblinking, as if trying to find the truth behind her own face. The silver in her skin shimmered softly. Under the ship's lights, her golden eyes were sharp, strange, and far from human. Her shoulders were wide, arms thick like tree trunks. She wasn't delicate. She wasn't soft. She wasn't anything a normal human man would want. She pressed her palm to the mirror. "I'm not a woman," she whispered. "I'm a monster." Behind her, Elias stood quietly in the doorway. He had been watching for a while but didn't interrupt her thoughts. Finally, he stepped forward and spoke. "Who told you that?" Valeri's hands clenched into fists. "Everyone," she said bitterly. "The scientist who made me, the guards who caged me, the buyers who passed by my cell. Do you want to know what they called me?" she asked, voice shaking. "They called me a breeding error." Elias didn't flinch. He didn't deny it. He just walked closer, slowly, carefully. "I'm not surprised," he said. "They feared what they didn't understand." She turned to face him fully, her large frame towering over him. "You don't understand either." She growled. "I can lift a transport shuttle by myself. My body isn't built for love or comfort, Elias. It's built to break things." Elias looked up at her, calm, steady, maybe, he said. "But the first time you used that strength since we met, you protected me." That made her pause. He was right. When those bounty hunters had broken into the lab 2 days ago, she had stepped in front of him, without thinking, without being told. Could have crushed every bone in their bodies, but she didn't. She held back, showed control. "I didn't mean to," she muttered. "Yes, you did," he replied. "You chose it, Valari." She sat down, suddenly tired. "I still don't feel normal," she said. "I don't even feel feminine." Elias pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "What does feminine mean to you?" he asked. She blinked, caught off guard. "I don't know," she admitted. "Small, soft, wanted." Elias smiled gently. "Then I must be blind," he said, "because I see someone strong, kind, protective, beautiful." She shook her head. "You're just being nice." "No," Elias said. "I'm being honest. I didn't buy you out of pity. I brought you here because I saw something the others couldn't." "I saw you." Valari didn't know how to answer that. No one had ever said anything like that to her, not even close. She had spent years trying to hide, to shrink herself, as if she could fold her giant frame into a cage no one would see. "Do you believe I can be more than this?" she asked softly. Elias didn't speak right away. He reached out slowly, letting her see his hand, and then placed it on top of hers. His hand was small against hers, but it didn't shake. "Yes," he said. "I believe you're more than your body. You're more than the lab that made you, more than the chains they wrapped around you. You're not a monster, Velar. You're a woman, a person, and you deserve to be seen." Velar looked down at their hands. She hadn't been touched gently in years. Every hand before had grabbed, pushed, hurt, but his didn't. It stayed there, calm, warm, steady. For the first time, she didn't pull away. She just breathed, long and deep, and something cracked inside her. Not pain, not fear, but something softer, something like hope. Later that night, she stood alone in her room again. She looked into the mirror once more. She still saw the same tall, wide-shouldered figure, but her eyes, they looked different now. Less empty, less broken. Maybe she wasn't what they had called her. Maybe she wasn't just a tool. Maybe she could be loved. She reached up, touched her own face, and whispered, "I'm not a monster." It felt strange to say, but this time she didn't feel like she was lying. And outside, in the silence of deep space, the ship drifted peacefully, carrying a woman who was finally beginning to see herself, not as a weapon, but as something worthy, as someone real. The lab was quiet. Too quiet, Valari had learned. To listen not just with her ears, but with her instincts. And something today felt wrong. Elias was in the greenhouse room. Working with alien plants he had collected, he trusted Valari enough now to let her roam the ship freely. She didn't wear chains, didn't hide in corners anymore. But freedom came with fear. Fear that it wouldn't last. The lights flickered. Once, then twice. Valerie's head turned sharply. Ships didn't flicker like that unless someone was hacking the system. She stepped into the hallway, bare feet silent despite her size. A strange smell hit her nose, burnt circuits and sweat. And then she heard it. Metal boots on metal floors. Too many too fast. They weren't part of Elias's crew. This was a raid. Valari rushed toward the control room, and that's when she saw them. 5 figures in black armor. Armed, fast, moving toward Elias's lab. Her mind didn't think. Her body just reacted. She ran forward with a growl, her footsteps shaking the walls. One of the intruders turned just in time to see her coming, and then she was on him. Her shoulders smashed into his chest with a bone-cracking sound. Flew backward into the wall, motionless. The others turned, guns up, too late. Valari grabbed the second attacker and slammed him to the floor. A third fired a pulse shot. It hit her arm, stung like fire. But she didn't stop. Pain didn't matter. Elias was in danger. She roared, not from rage, but from fear. Fear of losing the only person who had ever been kind to her. The fourth man dropped his weapon and ran. The last one tried to open the lab door, screaming into his come, but Valerie was already charging, with both arms raised. She smashed into the locked steel door. The door bent, cracked, then broke completely off its frame. Elias turned from his desk, eyes wide. Valerie. He gasped. She stood there, chest rising, bruises on her arms, sparks flying behind her. But she wasn't looking at him. She was scanning the room for threats. Only when she was sure he was safe did she relax. Her breath slowed, her hands dropped. Then she turned to him, and her voice came out quiet. "Are you hurt?" Elias stepped closer, eyes searching her face. "I'm fine," he said softly, "but are you okay?" Valari didn't answer right away. She looked down at her fists, still shaking, blood on her knuckles, armor fragments clinging to her skin. I broke the door," she whispered. "Ashamed I hurt them." She looked at Elias, her voice trembling. "Are you afraid of me now?" Elias stepped closer, slowly. He placed his hand on her wrist, not to stop her, but to ground her. "I'm not afraid," he said. "You protected me. I could have killed them." She said, "I almost did, but you didn't," Elias replied. "You chose not to. That choice is what makes you different." Valerie's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor. She had never cried in front of anyone before, but now the tears came hard, not from pain, not from anger, from fear that she would lose his trust, from relief that she hadn't. Elias knelt beside her, his voice calm and steady. "I trust you," he said, "even when you're angry. Even when you're scared, you could have broken this whole ship. But you didn't." Valari looked up, her golden eyes shining. "I thought you'd be afraid," she whispered. "I was afraid of myself." Elias smiled gently. "Strength isn't the enemy, Valari," he said. "It's what you do with it that matters." They sat there on the floor, surrounded by broken metal and sparks, but in that moment, something stronger had been built. Trust, deeper than before. A connection forged not by words, but by action, by choice, that night. Elias patched up her arm. He didn't ask questions, didn't scold her for the damage. He just said, "Thank you." Valari sat on her bed later, staring at her reflection again. The girl who once saw a monster in the mirror, now saw a protector, a warrior, yes, but with purpose she had been built to destroy. But now, she had chosen to protect, and that changed everything. Valari stood at the edge of the garden deck. The stars outside looked calm, endless. But inside her chest, a storm raged. She didn't know how to breathe around Elias anymore. Not because he hurt her, but because he didn't, and that scared her more than any cage ever had. Every time he smiled, her heartbeat skipped. Every time he spoke gently, her hands trembled. She had fought bounty hunters, broken steel, survived years of pain. But this feeling, it terrified her. Elias had given her space. He never touched her without asking, never forced words into her mouth. But now, the silence between them was growing thick, not uncomfortable, but heavy. She knew he looked at her differently now, not like a prisoner, not like a project, but like someone who mattered, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. Because she had seen what happened when people thought they loved something broken, they tried to fix it, and when it didn't change fast enough, they threw it away. Valari stepped into the medbay where Elias was adjusting a scanner. He turned. Surprised but calm? You okay? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Her fists clenched at her sides, eyes locked on the floor. Then she said it, voice shaking. You don't have to pretend you love me. The air froze. Elias blinked. Confused, pretend? He echoed. She looked up finally. Her golden eyes were wet but fierce. I know I'm not normal, she said. I know my body's wrong. I'm too big, too heavy. I was made for war, not love. I'm not soft, she whispered. I'm not gentle. I'm not human. So if you're just being kind because you feel sorry for me, you can stop. Elias took one slow step toward her. I'm not pretending, he said quietly. Valari backed away. You have to be, she said. How could someone like you want someone like me? You're brilliant, calm, respected. I'm just... A mistake. She turned her back, her voice cracking. You keep saying I'm free. But every time I feel something, I get scared, because I want to believe you. I want to believe I'm more than this body, more than what they said. But what if I'm not? Elias stood still for a moment. Then he reached for a drawer and pulled out something small. A holoframe. He placed it on the table and tapped it. It flickered to life, showing an image. A young girl, alien bright-eyed. Sitting in a hospital bed, next to her was Elias. Younger, smiling, holding her hand. That was Mira, he said softly. She was a hybrid like you. Not as big, not as strong, but just as lost. She was raised in a lab too, told she was dangerous, unlovable. I helped her escape. Valari turned, slowly. What happened to her? Elias's voice cracked. She died 2 years later. Her body couldn't handle the mix of DNA. But in those 2 years, she laughed, danced, painted stars on the walls. She lived, Valari. And before she died, she told me, one thing, don't stop helping the ones like me. He looked up, eyes shining. When I saw you, I saw her. But the more time I spent with you, I saw you. You are not Mira. You are not anyone's shadow. You are Valari. Strong. Brave. Angry. Kind. He stepped closer. And yes, I love you. Not because I pity you. Not because I want to fix you. But because you make me feel alive too. Valari didn't move. Her whole world tilted. No one had ever said that to her, not without wanting something back. But Elias stood there. Open. Honest. Waiting. She took a shaky breath. I don't know how to love, she said. I'm still learning how to be me. Elias smiled gently. Then let's learn together, he whispered. One day at a time, Valari stepped forward, not because she was sure, but because for the first time in her life, she wanted to. Try, she placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady, human, real. And for the first time, she didn't feel like she had to shrink herself to fit someone else's world. She just had to stand in it as she was that night. She didn't cry from fear. She cried because someone finally saw her, not just her size, not her strength, but her. And for the first time, the word love didn't feel like a trap. It felt like hope. Asterisk, the ship drifted through silent space. Outside the windows, stars blinked like tiny eyes watching from far away. Inside the ship, a different kind of silence filled the air. Not fear, not tension, something softer, something waiting. Valari sat on the edge of her bed, heart beating hard in her chest, the same chest that once held nothing but anger. Now carried something much heavier, hope, and that scared her more than pain ever had. She kept replaying Elias's words in her head. I love you. He had said it so icily, so gently, as if love was a language she already knew, but Valari had only ever spoken the language of survival. For hours she stayed in her room, pacing, thinking, breathing too fast. Every time she looked in the mirror, she still saw the same massive frame, the same heavy limbs. But now there was something new in her eyes, a question. Did she want love too? Not just kindness, not safety, but closeness, touch, connection. Could her body, strong, scarred, Strange be something someone could choose. Left her room quietly, barefoot. The halls were dark, the lights dimmed to night mode. She followed the sound of soft music playing from the observatory. Elias sat there alone, legs crossed, staring out at the stars. He didn't turn when she entered. He didn't need to, he knew it was her. Valari stepped closer, heart pounding. Every step felt heavy, not because of her size, but because this moment mattered more than any battle she had fought, more than any chain she had broken. She stood behind him for a long breath. Then finally spoke. "I don't know what to say, Elias." Turned his head slightly. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "But I want to," Valari whispered. She stepped around to face him, the light from the stars glowing softly on her silver skin. "I've been alone for so long," she said. "Even when people were around me, I was still alone," Elias looked up at her eyes. "Kind. You're not alone anymore." She nodded slowly, then her voice shaking. She asked the question that had haunted her since he said he loved her. "Do you still want me?" He didn't answer with words. He stood up and stepped toward her. His hand reached up and gently touched her cheek, not demanding, not claiming, just being there. "I've wanted you from the moment you chose to protect me," he said. "Not because you're strong, not because you're different, but because you feel, you care, you try." Valari's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever seen her like that. Not a tool, not a threat, not a mistake, but something worthy. She leaned into his touch, eyes closing. His hand was warm, his presence steady, and then, in a voice so soft she barely heard herself speak, she said it, "I'm yours." Elias didn't move fast. He waited, letting her choose every second, and when she opened her eyes and leaned down toward him, he met her halfway. Their lips touched gently. It wasn't desperate. It wasn't fast. It was real. And in that quiet moment, two people, one human, one hybrid, found something rare between stars: acceptance, affection, and something beginning to grow. Later that night, they sat side by side in her room, no chains, no secrets, only honesty between them. He held her hand, tracing the lines of her strong fingers. She rested her head on his shoulder, her eyes half closed. "I never thought I'd be wanted," she said. Elias smiled. "You're not just wanted," he whispered. "You're loved." They didn't need anything more that night. No grand promises, no fire or passion, just presence, just peace, just two broken pieces finally fitting together. And as she drifted into sleep beside him, Valari realized something she never thought possible. She wasn't just strong. She wasn't just free. She was held, and in that warmth, she whispered one final thought before sleep took her. "I never knew what yes felt like until now." The hum of the ship was soft as morning light poured through the windows. Valari sat in the med bay, staring at the floor, hands clenched in her lap. She was quiet. Too quiet for someone who had once broken through a steel door, and Elias, standing across the room, watched her carefully. She had woken up 2 days ago with a strange feeling. Not pain, not sickness, but different. Her body felt heavier in ways she didn't understand. Her senses sharper, her chest tight like something inside was changing. She had dismissed it at first, but Elias insisted on running a scan, just to be safe. Now the screen blinked. Quietly behind him, its message clear. Shocking, impossible, pregnancy confirmed. Valari hadn't spoken since she saw it. She just stared, breathing like someone drowning in slow motion. "I don't understand," she finally whispered. Her voice was shaking, not with fear, but something deeper, disbelief, they told. "Me, I couldn't," they said. "My body was too unstable, too unnatural." Leah stepped forward, slow, calm. "They were wrong," he said softly. "You're not broken." She looked up, eyes filled with storm. "Do you think it's a mistake? A false reading? A glitch?" Elias shook his head. "I triple-checked," he said. "Your body isn't rejecting the changes. In fact, it's adapting, welcoming them." Valari covered her face with both hands. Her chest heaved. Once, twice, and then a sob escaped. She wasn't crying from sadness. She was crying because the impossible had just become real. She had been made in a lab. She had been told she was too strong to carry life, too dangerous to be trusted with something fragile. But inside her now, something tiny, something new, something alive was growing. Elias sat beside her, not saying a word. He waited, just like he always did. No pressure, no rush, just presence. After a while, she spoke again. I don't know how to be a mother. I don't even know how to be me. Elias reached out and gently took her hand. You don't have to know everything, he said. You just have to keep choosing. To protect, to love, to try. She looked at him through teary eyes. And what if I mess it up? He smiled, soft and sure. Then we figure it out together, like we always have. Valari let out a shaky breath, then laughed. The sound surprised even her. It wasn't loud, wasn't perfect, but it was real. And Elias laughed too. Relief filling the room like air, she placed her hand gently over her stomach. Still flat, still quiet, but now it carried a secret, a new beginning. Not just for her, but for a life that no one expected. A life created not in a lab, but in love. Later that day, they sat in the observatory. Elias had brought out a blanket, a warm drink, and the holomap of distant planets. Valari rested beside him, eyes on the stars. What do you think it'll be? She asked. Boy, girl, something new? Elias chuckled. I think it'll be stubborn, he said, like its mother. She nudged him gently, smiling. Then her voice softened. Do you really believe I can do this? He turned to her and placed a hand over hers. I believe in you, he said. And that's more than enough. Outside space remained endless and quiet. But inside the ship, something beautiful had started. Something no scientist had planned. Something no slave auction could erase. Something strong enough to grow even inside a body once called broken. A future. Valari watched the stars and whispered, For so long I thought I was too much, too big, too wrong, too dangerous. But now? Elias looked at her, waiting. She smiled, eyes soft. Now I think I was just waiting for a place to belong, waiting for this. And beside her, in the safety of quiet love and starlight, a human and a hybrid sat side by side, no longer running from their past, but walking toward a future they never thought they'd have, together as one, as family.